All right, guys, lesson 11, we're going to talk about units and measurements. And the measurements you see before you, both English and the metric, will be provided on your midterm and final. So just be, if they're needed, these will be provided for you. So a measurement has two components, a numerical value and a component or a unit. In this lesson, we'll talk about both English and the metric. So you have yards, feet, inches, acres, miles, cups, pints, cups, quarts, gallons. Metric, you have kilo, heka, decta, your base unit. So whether it's liters, grams, meters, or anything like that, you have kilometers, hectometers, decameters, decimeters, whatever. These are all powers of 10. So this would be 10 to the 0. This would be 10 to the negative 1, 10 to the negative 2, 10 to the negative 3, 10 to the first, 10 squared, and 10 cubed. So if you don't know what those are, that's 1,000, that's 100, that's 10, that's 1, that's 0.10, or 0.1, 0.01, and 0.001. Okay, and then there is an acronym that goes with this, just like PEMDAS is, please excuse me, dear Aunt Sally, KHDGCM. King Henry died drinking chocolate milk. All right, and then of course this is just your base, so it could be grams, liters, meters, anything like that. King Henry died base drinking chocolate milk. And there is some videos in Canvas that walk you through this little King Henry acronym, and there's also one that talks about the representation of each of those. So how big is the millimeter? How big is the centimeter? And stuff like that. And can I use your visual representation? And those are some resources you can use as if you teach your kids. All right, so on number 1, we want to convert 5.25 miles to yards. All right, so we have 5.25 miles, and we want to change miles to yards. Okay, so what I'm doing here is called dimension analysis. So there are if you look at the table above, you got 1760 yards for 1 mile. And I set it up this way. You can say that 1760 yards over miles or miles over yards. It really depends on what you're trying to get rid of. So I'm trying to get rid of the miles. So there's that. And then it's 5.25 times 1760. And that's going to give you 9240 yards. And you want to make sure that you include your units in here. So 9,240 yards. All right, so simple equation. And you can get really comfortable with that as far as like doing units and stuff like that, especially as it gets more complex. The dimensional analysis part is really helpful. So you use dimensional analysis when you're trying to convert one unit to another. And so for like number 2, it says if a cheetah is clocked at 60 miles per hour, what is the speed in feet per second? So not only do we have to change miles to feet, but we have to change hours to seconds. Okay, so we have 60 miles per 1 hour. 1 hour. All right, so I need to spend some time. All right, I need to change miles to feet. Well, I know that 1 mile is 5,280 feet. So I've taken care of the miles at this point. Now I just need to focus on the time. So 1 hour, and I put the 1 hour on top because the original hour is in the bottom, and I want to get rid of it. 1 mile or 1 hour is 60 minutes, and then 1 minute is 60 seconds. Okay, so I was able to get rid of the miles. Now I get rid of the hours and the minutes, and now I have feet over seconds. You multiply across the top, and you multiply across the bottom. So, and then when you do that, use your calculator, you get 88 feet per second. Okay. So this lesson is not terribly difficult. All right, it can be tedious depending on how things go for you, and how comfortable you are with these measurements. Especially the metric measurements are really straightforward because it's just multiplying by powers of 10 or dividing by powers of 10. The English measurements arguably are a little more difficult because there's more stuff to keep up with. All right, but you have 219 feet per yard. Okay, so that's 219 feet. And I know there's 3 feet in each yard. So I can simply divide by 3, and that gives me 73. So you can do something as simple as this, or you can go through the whole dimensional analysis process. It's really up to you. And as you get more comfortable with it, as your students get more comfortable with it, you can kind of decide how you want to handle that. All right, you have 8432 yards. And I need to change that to miles. And there are 1760 yards in 1 mile. Okay, so you would multiply that out, or rather multiply across top, divide across the bottom, and you would get 4.7 miles. So Pearson will tell you how many decimals to round it to, whether it's 1, 2, 3 decimals. All right, so don't get bogged down in that. Like, if you want your students to give you a certain number, tell them directions, verbally, whatever. Do I want more than 1 decimal? Do I want 2? How do you round? Like, you want to make sure your students understand all that. All right, miles to feet. All right, there are 5,280 feet in a mile. So I'm just going to multiply like that, and that's going to give me 1,056 feet. 64 inches in a yard. Well, 64 inches in 1 yard, or 64 inches, I'm going to change it to feet, and I'll change it to yards. So there are 12 inches in 1 foot. There is 3 feet in 1 yard. So you multiply across the top, divide across the bottom, and you would get 1.78 yards. On 9, you have 27 liters to milliliters. So this is simply liters are bigger than milliliters, and so I'm going to multiply by 1,000. So this is going to be 27,000 milliliters. You have milliliters to liters. Milliliters are smaller, so you're going to divide by 1,000. 362 divided by 1,000. This can give you 0.362 milliliters. All right. You may not see this on a test or anything like that, but 1 milliliter is 1 cubic centimeter. So this is just 1 to 1. And this is something that is used. There are a few measurements that we use to go from the English system to the metric system and back again. Or in this case, you would go from one base to another. So another one that we might use is 1 centimeter, or sorry, 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. That's an exact conversion. So if you needed to go from meters to inches or meters to yards, something like that, you would need to use that conversion. Here, it's a 1 to 1, so 3 milliliters is 3 cubic centimeters. So here you have grams to kilograms. So grams is smaller, so 34 divided by 1,000. All right, it's going to give you 0.034 kilograms. Now, if the unit scale factor is A, then area would be a squared and volume would be a cubed. So on 11, I have 5 centimeters squared, and I would need to get rid of the centimeter squared. So if I'm doing dimensional analysis, it looks like this. So I have 5 centimeters squared, and I would need to say 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters, and I need to do that twice so that I get rid of the centimeter squared and I introduce a millimeter squared. So that's 5 times 10 times 10, which is going to give you 500 millimeters squared. Okay, so another way to do that is 5 times 10. Let's see, 5 times centimeter squared times 10 millimeters squared. All right, so that's where the a squared comes in. So you can just do this simple calculation. 5 times 10 squared is 500. So you could do that instead. Either way works. Here I have 124 million meters squared, and you got kilometers squared, so 124 million. All right, meters squared. All right, so I'm going to multiply by 1 over 1,000 kilometers, and I'll square that whole thing. All right, so there is 1/1000th kilometer is the same thing as a meter. So I'm going to multiply that squared, and that's going to give me 124 kilometers squared. Uh, 45 yards cubed equals feet cubed, so I got 45 yards cubed times, all right, there is 3 feet in a yard, so 3 feet, and then I'm going to cube that whole thing. So 45 times 3 cubed is going to be 1215. Um, 4320 inches cubed. All right, so you need to go to feet and then a yard. There are 12 inches in a foot, so 1/12, an inch is 1/12 of a foot, and I'm going to cube that. And then there are, a yard is 1/3 of a foot. You're going to cube that. So 4320 times 1/12 cubed times 1 cubed, or 1 over 3 cubed. And that's going to give you 0.0926 yards cubed. Okay, a square field has a side of 400 yards. Find the area of the field in acres. So if you go back up here to your units, I said 1 acre is 4,840 yards squared. So we're looking for square yards. And we have a square field. So a square field has a side of 400. So the area is going to be, area is 400 squared. Don't forget your units. So it's going to be 160,000 yards squared. And then 1 acre is, so I got 160,000 yards squared times 1 acre is 48040 or 4840 yards squared. So that's just a simple multiplication, and you get approximately 33 acres. Okay, here you get 12,300 millimeters squared, and there is a centimeter is 10 times more than a millimeter. So a millimeter is, there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter. So 1/10 centimeters, and you cube that, and you get 12.3. Okay, and then millimeters, centimeters is the same thing. 5 millimeters cubed times 1/10 centimeters, all cubed. And that gives you, I'm sorry, meters. There's 100 centimeters in a meter, so you got 100 centimeters cubed. All right, and that's going to give you 5 million for your answer. All right, so that is lesson 11. I hope this makes sense to you. Please reach out if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next lesson.